I want to thank the families for walking us through the building today and allowing us the opportunity to get a slight glimpse into what they deal with every single solitary day. I remember exactly where I was on February 14th in 2018. I was on the floor of the state legislature. We were debating some tourist development tax when my wife had called in the middle of the shooting because she had driven by the school on her way to run an errand as kids were running out of the building. And I wound up coming home that afternoon, and it was in this building, in this very ballroom, where I wound up meeting some of these parents that I shouldn't know at all, but they were here because this is where they were keeping the families of the kids that were missing. This was the ballroom in which they told these family members what happened to their kids or their husbands, their loved ones. And, you know, I had a visceral reaction, and I immediately called my colleagues from across the aisle in the state legislature. I called the Speaker of the House, who was a friend of mine. I called the Appropriations Chair, and I didn't have a strategy. I just thought they had to see it because I had gone to the school that night. And when these events happen, you watch it on TV, you see it from 1,000 feet away. You don't see what happens when a school is turned into a war zone. And they came, and more came on a bipartisan basis. And within the last 3 weeks of the legislature, we passed what became the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act, which was the largest school safety, mental health, gun violence prevention bill the state of Florida had ever passed. 5 years later, that bill is not only intact, but it is stronger. And it is school safety, it is mental health counselors, and it is gun violence prevention. And we did that on a bipartisan basis to make sure that these parents who were involuntarily put into a selective club that no parent wants to belong to. And Max and Tony have crisscrossed the country since that day, working to make sure other parents don't go through this. Lori and Debbie ran for school board to work from the inside to make sure our schools are safer so that, you know, my kids who go to Broward County School and other parents don't have to experience this. Parkland was the safest city in the entire state of Florida based on crime statistics when this event happened. And it is now home to the largest school shooting in American history. My own son, you know, that day was at a preschool right around the corner from where you were. He was 4 years old, and he was in a writing class. And the teacher who was with him in that writing class was Jen Guttenberg, Fred Guttenberg's wife. And when, obviously, the shooting started happening, all the schools went into lockdown. Jen Guttenberg went into a closet with my son when her daughter Jamie was killed. And so, for me, this has always been personal. And you guys coming here today, just to see it, to experience it, you can read about it all day long. You can debate it all day long. But it's not the same as going and walking through the school. And so when Max came to me and said, you know, now that the trials are over, I think we should bring a delegation through the building, it reminded me of what we did 5 years ago when people came. And so, you know, I want to thank members from across the aisle. I want to thank my colleague, Mario, who, when I reached out to him and said, hey, will you chair this with me? Absolutely said yes, and I'll work on members getting here. And, you know, we're going to hear from, you know, all you later, but I personally want to thank you for coming. You know, I know we're on the beginning of the break, we got Codels going on, but I know how much it means to these parents who have dedicated their life to this issue. And so, you know, I'm going to turn it over to Mario for a few words, and then Max Schachter is going to speak. But the hope is that, you know, we can figure out, right? There can be areas that we disagree. The hope is that we can figure out how these parents who have dedicated their life to this issue, right? How we work with them, because you've met them in D.C. You know, how we can work with them so that we're protecting kids in different communities all over the country. And with that, I want to turn over to the Dean of the Florida delegation, Mario Diaz-Balart.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. And to the parents that are here in particular, you know, I can't even imagine having to relive this as you are, as you've had to in the trial, and so just know that we're incredibly grateful that you're willing to spend this time with us, and we're so grateful for what you've done in the state and nationally to really make a huge difference and to keep our children safe, our schools safe. Jared, you, my friend, for your leadership. You know, this is something that, as you stated, but more than your statement, you have proven is a again, as you mentioned, it's personal, right? And you, however, have made a difference in the state legislature and working with your colleagues in Washington. And so, you know, today witnessing going through that building and really kind of firsthand seeing, you know, witnessing among the most horrific acts of evil that human beings could ever do, not human beings, because that's just little evil, is, as Jared said, is you know, is an experience that you see that it's hard not to understand just how evil that is. And it's also impossible to not see how, while we have huge differences, and that's healthy in a democracy, and we debate all sorts of things, that there are things that are kind of like no-brainers that we need to continue to get together, to get done. And I'm grateful to my colleagues here. I'm grateful to your leadership, but more importantly, grateful to the parents, the loved ones of these individuals who unfortunately are no longer with us. But so again, my gratitude to all of you, particularly the parents. And while I think, you know, Florida, as you mentioned, by the way, really kind of has led the country. And I think we've done some good things, Max, in the appropriations process and other places, but the reality is that there's so much more that we can do. And so again, and as Jared said, short notice for all the members. You know, I know everybody has plans, and so I'm exceedingly grateful for your presence here and for spending this time and for working together on an issue which, again, if we can't get together and work together on this, and then, you know, what the heck are we doing, right? So, again, thank you all for coming, to the parents, the loved ones, and again, Jared, to you, my friend, for your leadership and your work on issues that are just so incredibly important to the parents, but to everyone, and so that this never happens again. So thank you. I yield back.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Max, who came to me with the idea. But I just want to say that, you know, when this all happened, you know, there was a basic premise that I had in my mind that when I went back to the legislature and worked with my colleagues in those 3 weeks, the basic premise was whatever we did, whatever we passed, if it wouldn't have stopped what happened at Douglas, then the bill fails. And that's why it was so comprehensive. And it was just a basic principle I had in my mind, which is we got to be able to tell parents in this country that when they drop their kids off at school, they get to pick them up. We got to be able to figure out how we live up to that promise. So, Max.
Thank you, Jared. I want to thank all the families that are here, Debbie, Jen, and Tony, Lori, and Ann, and all the families that helped me put this together. I walked through that building a month ago, and I came out of there, and I was angry. I said, I have to have every member of Congress walking through this building. And then I approached my good friends, Jared Moskowitz and Mario Diaz-Balart, and I said, I agree with you, Max. Let's do it. And then I reached out to the superintendent who was here. Thank you, Superintendent Licata, and all the school board members, and they were on board as well. So I want to thank them for making this a reality on such short notice. We only gave members of Congress like several weeks to plan, and I know everybody has their schedule booked up, so thank you for taking time out of your day to come here and walk through that building. I know it was meaningful for all of the members of Congress that walked through the building today. They saw the aftermath of what happens when you don't prioritize safety and security. And I think that they understand the failures that happened today. As we're walking through that building, we're identifying, and members are coming up to me saying, if we only had done this, if we only had done this. And so I hope that this shared experience of us all going through this together, understanding the failures, and at the same time grieving the 17 beautiful souls that are no longer with us, but will always be with us, that we can come together and we can enact common sense school safety solutions so that this will never happen again. Because safety has to come before education, because you cannot teach dead kids. And I think everybody understands that, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation so we can work towards common sense solutions to make sure this never happens again.
All right. So with that, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get. What I'll do is we're just going to go around the table, kind of give everyone a couple of minutes, and then we can kind of do some questions after that. So I appreciate everyone for coming. Thank you to the media for coming and covering this. Appreciate it.